Джонатан Кент пришел в оперу, имея за плечами четверть века успешной карьеры актера и режиссера в драматическом театре. Постановка оперы Рихарда Штрауса «Женщина без тени» – его вторая работа в Мариинском театре.
I first came here to do Electra 2 years ago, and I didn't really know what to expect. I mean, I'd seen the Mariinsky, but never been to the theatre here in St. Petersburg. And of course, one is overwhelmed by the sense of history of the place, never mind the opera, but the ballet as well. And it's an extraordinarily romantic theatre with its great heritage. But what also struck me was the sense of purpose of all the artists who work here, and sometimes in very hard conditions, but work, I think, with such great spirit. And so although doing Electra was at times confusing and at times bewildering, just the system was so different, but in the end I came to have the greatest admiration and affection for this theatre and for the people who work here. Also, it was Gergiev conducting Strauss was phenomenal. It was a really remarkably passionate reading of the piece, and with a cast headed by Larissa Gogolovskaya, who was just second to none. So it was an extremely happy, in the end, an extremely happy experience. And then when Gergiev talked to me about perhaps doing something else, we decided to continue with Strauss and to go on exploring Strauss. And this piece is done comparatively rarely because it makes such huge musical demands, not just on one or two people, but there are 5 hugely demanding parts, and it is a very complex and difficult score and libretto. So it was a challenge, but having been here before, I knew it was a challenge that the Mariinsky could answer. Well, it's, as I said, a very complicated piece, but I think by the end, it allows a kind of, a sort of optimism. It's Van Hofmannsthal and Strauss saw it as their magic flute, and then there are a series of trials that the Die Frau and the Kaiserin, the 2 women at the center of it, go through, and at the end they arrive at a sense of identity. And I think what is very interesting about the piece now is the role. It's about women. It's about 2 women finding their role in their societies, and at the end of it, arrive at a sense of completion and identity, which I think is interesting. You know, this was written, as you know, in Vienna in the beginning of the 20th century, which was an absolute crucible of intellectual exploration and thought. It was Freud was writing, the effect of Schopenhauer, the effect of Nietzsche. It was the center of European thought, and a lot of the themes in this echo, for instance, the theories of Jung, for instance. I mean, the very notion of the shadow is a Jungian conceit, and this predates Jung's thesis of the shadow. But nonetheless, it has the same idea about somebody who has to accommodate the darkness of themselves before they can achieve an identity. So I just think it's very interesting now, at the beginning of the 21st century, to investigate the role of women in society, and the way that women are torn nowadays between having a career and a life and having children. And it's an interesting debate, which 100 years ago Strauss and Van Hofmannsthal were in their own way deliberating. Well, the piece falls into two halves. There's the fairy tale world. Part of it is a sort of fairy tale. The world of the Kaiserin, of the Empress and the Emperor, is a sort of world of the spirit and a world of imagination. But the world of Barak and his wife is a banal, hard, miserable existence with no, and what Barak's wife aspires to is the world of imagination, the world of a sort of spiritual and romantic satisfaction. And so the world is, the story of the opera occupies two worlds. And in the third act, these two worlds are brought together.
Обычно, следя за борьбой двух персонажей, императрицы и жены Барака, публика разделяется на два лагеря. А лично вы кому отдаете предпочтение?
Oh, I think they're both, in their way, they're both women who I think are entirely sympathetic, but have a struggle to find their identity. I think they, no, I don't particularly prefer one or the other.